Hello and welcome to the Life is a Party podcast. I am your host, Olivia Santos, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Assumpta Vitcu. Hello, my dear. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Hi, everyone.
So this is our first podcast. This is a scary thing, hey? A scary moment, a new moment for our Owambe. And before we begin, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported our launch so far. That's so cool of all of you to be behind us. It's been really fun, and we enjoy seeing your comments and your likes and your shares. It's been fabulous.
It's been quite the ride. We really appreciate you all, and thank you for sticking with us. There's more to come, so don't go anywhere.
Awesome. So our first podcast, we wanted to be as explosive as possible. So we're going to talk about money. I love talking about money. I love talking about money and weddings because it makes people so uncomfortable. I love it.
So uncomfortable. I don't love it. I'm going to be honest. I do not love talking about money, and I do not love talking about money with weddings.
Oh, so this is going to be even more juicy because I really do. It really tickles me. We're going to be talking about the grand old question, are weddings too expensive? And a sub-question to that is, do wedding suppliers owe it to the public to make weddings affordable? Like, should we be making weddings cheaper? Two very big, juicy questions.
Definitely.
That I think we disagree on slightly, which is even more exciting. So, to start off, you are actually married. I am the unmarried person here. For everyone who's listening, I am the single person here. So you are actually married, and you spent a pretty penny on your weddings, plural.
We did.
So did you feel at the time when you were planning your wedding that weddings are too expensive?
No. Yes and no. I don't really know how to answer that. I wasn't working in the industry. I should say that for everybody who doesn't know. I wasn't a wedding planner when I was planning our weddings, but I did plan them myself. And some of the things shocked me in terms of prices, but the majority didn't. I think because my family and I, we all have planned events previously, and we're all used to paying a certain amount for things. So I didn't come to plan my wedding and think, how much? Like, no, if you want quality, you're paying for it. So I'm possibly not the best person to ask that question. Some things were alarming to me, like a baker that I really, really wanted. At the time, she might actually be charging more now, but at the time when I inquired, her starting price was £2,000. That shocked me a bit, because I was like, for cake, I love cake. Cake is the way to my heart, and I did pay quite a lot for our cake, but I just couldn't justify £2,000 as a starting price before I added all the details that I wanted. So no. I think that was the only thing that made me a little bit like, well, damn.
Yeah, no, that is a lot of money. But it's also like, I am also not the person to ask this question because I started in the business at the high end. So that was normal for me. I started in weddings doing these high net worth individual weddings. So a $2,000 cake is normal. That was normal to me. So when I started to branch out in terms of my business, or in terms of knowing the industry a little bit better, and people are complaining about a £500 cake, I'm like,
that's wild. Yeah, that is wild.
That's so normal to me, and particularly now that I live in and work in Portugal, where our cakes here start from €300, which is, £250. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could get that from Marks and Spencer. That's nothing. So to see people still complain at every single juncture has been super interesting, particularly when you start at that kind of high point. And I think it's that, like, is it always just going to be too expensive? Like, is it just going to be too expensive to everyone? Like, even if we charged 10 quid for a cake, would that be too expensive for someone?
Yes, it will. Some things will always be expensive for some people, but not for everyone. Yeah, I think things will always be expensive for some. One of our venues, because we had 2 separate wedding days, one of our venues is just the dry hire of the venue cost more than some of the people that fill out my inquiry form, and that's their budget for their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, when people tell me 7,000 is too much for a wedding venue, I'm like, look, that's nothing. That's actually not a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, to some people it is a lot of money. If you're not spending tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands on your wedding, 7,000 is too much to spend on your venue, because you have to consider everything else you're doing.
But the thing is that we have to, I mean, it's not to say that you can't make a wedding with £7,000. You can.
You definitely
You just
can.
have to be really realistic about the number of guests that you can afford for that many people, and what that wedding is going to look like. So I don't think that weddings are expensive. I think that people have these super high expectations for the budget that they actually have. Like, you're just dreaming of you're looking at these images, and to be fair, like, we do this a lot in the industry. We share these images without much context to how much they cost.
Oh, that's true.
Like, Pinterest is such a rabbit hole for this. The average wedding on there has got to be like 70k, 80k, something like that. The average, but there is no price tag on those images. And so when people come to me with a budget of €15,000, which is what, £12,000, maybe $17,000, somewhere like that, and they're showing me an image from a wedding that's 100k plus, I'm really honest with them and say, look, you can have a beautiful wedding with your budget, but not this one.
Yeah. So that kind of follows on to a question that I had in my mind as you were speaking. So instead of affordability, do we owe people transparency?
Yes.
Do we need to be more transparent about what we are doing, or what goes into creating those Pinterest-worthy weddings versus the average wedding? Because the average wedding is not what's on Pinterest. The average person does not have a wedding that, does the rounds, that goes viral. That's not an average wedding, because the average cost of a wedding in the UK is in the 20s, like high 20s.
Yeah,
20,000.
20. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah, and in London it's slightly higher, so in major cities. I'm not sure what it is in Portugal or in America, but that's, again, I'm going to really stress that word. It's average. The ones on Pinterest that we've just mentioned, or the things that go viral on Instagram, that's like a drop in the ocean of their budget. That's only a small fraction. So I think people also forget that, what they're trying to plan with their money is average, and what they're seeing is not average. So
yeah, and we have to, but this also comes to a gripe that I have with social media, with weddings in particular. We do kind of normalize these extraordinary weddings. And instead of showing, like, for example, you just did this really beautiful wedding, such a gorgeous wedding, and we hope that we'll be featuring it on the blog in a few weeks or months' time. But that was like DIY, pared down. And that DIY vibe is not as celebrated as the more illustrious productions, like the one that I did on the
same day.
On the same
the
day.
contrast.
And they spent way over their budget, but they're minted. And they just kept going. They just kept on increasing the budget to make it what it was. And, I did get emails from my current couple saying, "Oh my god, this event is so amazing. I really want this." I'm just like, yeah, they've got like double your budget. I'm really sorry. You know, we could do the color
Did you
thing.
tell them that?
I'll do it in person. Hey, I won't do
Okay.
maybe not an email.
The
But
reason why I asked is back to transparency. Did you give them that transparency?
I do normally, you know, but I do it over a call. They'll send me images, or they'll send me something on Instagram, and I'll say, I love this, and we can approximate something like this for your budget, but this is not realistic with what you've got right now. If you want to increase it to X amount for flowers, you can make this happen. And it usually happens with, like, you know, floral arches and things like that. These huge things. I'm just like, I mean, I can tell you how much it is. If you want to spend that much, then you can buy it. Then we can do it. But if not, then I'm really sorry. It's not in your wheelhouse. This is why I like talking about money, because I like to be as transparent as possible with my clients. Just be like, no, you can't afford it. I'm very, very open about that. Yeah.
But even that wedding that I did on Saturday, so someone might see it and think, oh, that's accessible for me. And when I really thought about it, I don't think it is for some people. If you were to recreate the exact wedding we had, because of the bride and groom's taste, the person we got the crockery from, not cheap. The person we got linen from, not cheap. So even though it kind of had like a DIY vibe about it, like the quality of everything, even the champagne, the drinks that were served, not cheap. So when I thought about the breakdown of their budget, especially for the number of guests they had, there were only 32 people in the room, but what was spent, I'm just like, no, the average person probably couldn't do this either. So, it's swings and roundabouts, really. People see these images and think that they can easily recreate it. Or worse still, my bugbear is trying to recreate these champagne weddings. And that's not to say you shouldn't try and do it within your budget. You should. But when couples really try and stick to this image that they have in their head instead of trying to create something that's more suitable for them, and then it just ends up looking like missing the mark completely, whereas you could have just done something that was like perfect for you and more your style as opposed to someone else's style and trying to be a copycat of it, you know.
And that's a great tip. Like, if you actually embrace the budget that you have and get the things that are within your wheelhouse, like just like the best quality at the level that you're at, that's where the magic, it really happens. I don't think it is just spending a lot of money to make something impressive. I think it's just being really smart about the money that you have and making things as detailed and as personalized as possible at that level, wherever you are. Because we've seen like super, super expensive weddings that are just bland. We've both seen that, agreed. You know? So even having a lot of money, if you're not actually going to use it wisely, is still a waste, to be honest.
I think what you just said is so, so important to highlight, that just getting the best quality that you can at your price point, at your budget. And there are so many suppliers that can help you with that. You just have to be willing to do a bit of research, ask some questions. But circling back to your original question of, do we owe couples or clients affordability? Yes and no. There are people within every budget that can help you, that can service you and help you with your wedding. But I don't think that you should go to somebody who caters for high end and expect them to lower their prices because you want to work with them. I think you can find somebody that's within your budget that will do a perfectly reasonable and really good job for you. I think the trouble comes in when people see these suppliers on Instagram and think, oh, I want you. And then when they see the price, you start hammering them for their price. But that's what they can command. Let them do it.
It's so true. But I also like, I really like the question, do we afford you? Do we owe you affordability? Because have seen over recent years, like, I've done this myself as well. I do a little bit of freelance writing, and I wrote a piece recently on charging your worth as a freelancer, like how to charge your worth, how to price yourself in a way that honors what you do. And it really made me think about this narrative that we have as small business owners, that, you know, we're kind of encouraged to, yes, charge our worth, but charging your worth could be quite high.
Yeah.
And especially for beginners, you know, for people who are relatively new to the industry, there are still people that are pricing themselves quite high because that's what the industry standard is, or that's what you're told to do. If we just do it from the wedding planner's perspective, in the UK, you know, training for the UK wedding planners, guilds and associations and all those sorts of things, all of them will probably recommend that you start at $4,000, that you're not below that for full wedding planning, which, honest to God, like, $4,000 is not a lot of money for what we do. Okay, it's never it's really not.
Preach. Wait, you have to pause there, because there's going to be a blog post. I'm quite passionate about this. I'm going to write a blog post about it at some point, guys, so please wait for that. And if you don't get it, call me out on it. But we have to take a moment to explain that wedding planners, even coordinators, people who don't plan but just coordinate, are worth their weight in gold. And people do not understand what we do. So when you say the price, so Olivia has just said 4,000, I'm sure some of you might have gasped, like, I'm not paying a wedding planner 4,000. I'm like, you plan your wedding, you carry on. And then when we get to the end of it, you come back to this episode and you can let us know if you wish you had hired a planner. People underestimate exactly what we do. Sorry to have interjected there, but I feel quite passionately about that.
It's so true.
If we're going to go by this statistic that's always flying around that says it takes an average wedding takes 250 hours to plan, or can do, oftentimes it will take more. If you're paying somebody £4,000, that means you're paying them £16 an hour.
Yeah.
£16 an hour. And that we now haven't factored in venue visits, the cost of their internet, the cost of their, well, travel to go anywhere, their phone bill, these emails that are being sent, you know, all of these things you don't actually think of, but this is what's included: troubleshooting, listening, advising. Some planners do offer styling, you know, all these different things have to be factored into that fee that you're paying, and then being there on the day to run the day.
Yeah, for, you know, minimum 10, sometimes 24. Do you remember we did a 24-hour wedding together?
Yeah, I remember. It was stressful at times, but super fun.
God. It's like literally being
sorry,
awake.
you were saying, back to the guidelines for you were saying the guilds would say you charge about 4,000, and as a newbie, that's quite a lot to command if you've not got that much experience.
Exactly.
Or no experience.
Yeah, we start there, and you're encouraged to start there, and it does make me think, like, who is catering to the budget, the more budget brides in brides and grooms and non-binaries, sorry, in the lower brackets when it comes to weddings, because $4,000, if you have a budget of 15 grand, is, you know, almost a third. So,
but there are people, I've seen planners that, I've heard of planners, I should say, I don't really know them personally, that charge like 1,500, 2,000 for a full plan.
Yes, but then we demonize them, particularly within the industry. We're just like, you know, how dare they charge so little, because they're not it makes it harder for the rest of us to charge so much, right? And I understand that argument as well. Like I understand, like, for example, if Cafe Nero decided that it's going to sell all of its coffees for £1 tomorrow, then that would make it much harder for Starbucks and all of the other coffee places to then charge their £5 for a coffee, right? I get it. I understand logically, but I also believe that it raises the minimum for everyone, and it does make things less accessible for the broader public, the average, right? If we're talking about average weddings, which is what most people will have. So that's why, I mean, when it comes to wedding planners, I say, if you can't afford a wedding planner, it's not the end of the world. Like, I am actually someone who believes that not everyone does need a wedding planner or does want a wedding planner, which is fine. But when you talk about things like photography and the things that are just bare minimum essentials of getting a wedding done, I do worry a little bit about the budget side. I do worry that there aren't enough people who are catering to that side, because it's hard to do that sustainably as suppliers. It's really hard for a photographer to charge 500 quid to do a wedding. You just can't do it. It's just not fair. They would have to work twice a week, every single week for the entire year to make any kind of wage. So.
Well, you can do it, but you might end up in court, as per an article I read where a student photographer who the couple found her on Gumtree, I believe, or something of the sort, and she charged them £500. They did not like their pictures, and she was smiling and saying she doesn't understand why they didn't like them. They got what they paid for, and that's actually what she said. She said that they got what they paid for, and so I'm true. Happy with the pictures. Like, she was happy to put her name to it. There are people there. You will always find someone somewhere, but the problem is you may not be happy with what you get. You might have a different vision in mind.
So what's the solution then? Because then what happens if you don't have that budget? You don't have, the average, like 20, let's say 25 for argument's sake. So let's say 25k pounds. That would be €28,000. That would be around getting closer to $30,000, let's say. So what if you don't have that? And what could be the solution to still have what you deem to be a nice day?
You cut down the number of guests.
That's it.
That's what affects your your wedding budget significantly. If you half the number of people at your wedding, instead of trying to feed 150, well, anywhere between 150 and 300, as I've heard, 300 people for your 30,000 budget, why not just have 50? You could have like, if you're spending 30 grand for 50 people, you could do quite a lot there. Like, or you have to cut down the number of people, or you adjust your expectations.
Yeah,
that's it. You just adjust your expectations. You have to find a venue that doesn't need a lot of stuff doing to it. You don't need a lot of decor, which I feel is probably a lot easier to do in Portugal than in the UK, because then you could just use the outdoors. Not so wise to do here. You always need some sort of like weather contingency plan. But essentially you need to find a venue that maybe you don't need so many flowers or decor or whatever to make it look a certain way, and just get creative with your shopping. Whether you're buying your dress, if you're wearing a wedding dress, that is, or your suit, if you want to have a suit made, that will be quite costly, but think about shopping in vintage places or outlets. You could still have a very nice dress. A friend of mine took her friend to a designer outlet dress place, and she bought her dress for like £300 or 500, and it was beautiful. So you just have to get more creative. Maybe if with your baker you can discuss your budget, and if you are wanting something that's super tall and impactful, then most of it won't be cake. They will be dummy tiers as opposed to cake. These are the things that you can do to kind of tweak your budget a little. I would say do not skimp on your photography, and if you're having videography, same thing.
Yeah.
Don't try and budget that at all. Like, find the best person for the amount of money that you have to spend, but definitely don't go down that Gumtree £500 route. I wouldn't recommend it, because the other thing that a lot of people miss out on is the fact that if you hire a fantastic photographer, heck, even an expensive photographer, and potentially your venue isn't that amazing, or there are certain bits that you're not sure of, the right photographer with a great eye and a wonderful editing style will make that wedding look way more expensive. And while I understand that your guests are there on the day and you're there on the day, you might see something slightly different. The only thing you're left with after your wedding, as I put in one of the recent blog posts, and I was quoting a friend, are your rings, your photography, your videography. Like, these are the things that you take away. That's how you will remember your day. So you want to spend money on those things.
For sure. I completely agree with you. Never scrimp on photography and videography if you're having videography. I'm actually more on board with videography recently. I wasn't always, but I do actually think, because I just think that you watch it once and then okay.
Full disclosure, we've never watched our wedding videos. But I am glad that we have them, because to me, it was only in recent years that I discovered that not everybody has a wedding video.
Yeah.
And the only reason why, to me, it was a norm is because my parents have one, and they've been married for 30 something, like almost 40 years. And I can watch their wedding. So I think because almost 40 years ago, they had a wedding video, it just, to me, it was just like, oh, well, yeah, that's a standard thing. It's not a standard.
It's really
a lot
not.
of people don't.
No, it's always been like a bit of a luxury thing to me. Like, you know, if budget allows, is what I usually say to my clients. If they have a strict budget. If they don't have a strict budget, then sure, throw in a video, because video is also not, as we say, not cheap. You know,
yes.
A good video is gonna cost you a couple of thousand. So it is a budget pending kind of thing, but I am more on board more recently, particularly having spent like this past event where they did the coolest things. They had 2 drones, they had GoPros that went underwater. We did like an interview kind of thing with the guests, because it was a corporate event. So we did these, like, you know, little messages for the company, and so the video is just going to be off the charts. I know it is. So
that's amazing.
I'm more on board with it now. But you know, they spent money on that video, and it's going to be incredible.
But I find it really interesting that they chose videography but not a photographer.
Yes, I know. I don't know.
I've never heard that before, like video, but I know you can pull stills from the video, but I've never heard someone choose a videographer and not have a photographer.
I know, yeah. I think it's because the company, sorry to go on a tangent, everyone, but the company in this particular context had done events before in other countries and only had a video, and that had been like enough for them. So
okay.
That's what they felt was the more important thing. But I was definitely going to get some stills of that. Like what am I going to do with the video? I needed photography. So I'm so glad that I brought someone with me. But yeah, so don't scrimp on photography and videography. Don't assume, you know, if you're trying to cut costs, don't assume that a destination wedding is going to be cheaper. More likely you will spend the same amount. I can tell you this by I've been working in destination weddings for the past 3 years, and everyone pretty much breaks even in what they would have spent at home. You do more than one event usually at a destination wedding. You have obviously you have all of your transport and accommodation and all those kind of extra costs, flights, etc. And then also just being good hosts to your guests costs you money. This could be like arranging tours for people. It could be, it could be, like I said, all of the extra events that you do. It could be creating welcome packs for your guests when they arrive, just to give them a bit of a guide to what they're doing and where they're going.
Got to love a welcome pack.
I love a welcome pack. I love a good welcome pack, particularly when it's like all designed and stuff, which is what we do. We love it. We love doing that. So yeah, destination wedding is not going to save you money. Neither is a marquee wedding. Oh my god, the amount of people that think marquees are cheap.
They are not cheap, and I just don't even understand why people think that. Not only is it expensive to get the marquee itself, or you might think, oh well, it's cheaper than hiring a venue. Yes, it is, but then where are you putting this marquee? You need land to put it on. And then also, where's the electricity coming from? Where will people go to the toilet? Like all of these different considerations. You have to bring all the furniture in, which you would, I guess, have to do for a dry hire venue. But the logistics of it all, where are people parking? Where are people sleeping? You have so many more things to think about. Health and safety. How are you freezing, or chilling your drinks? Where you're going to have to erect another marquee nearby for the catering staff. Like all of these things.
It's so funny.
You can tell I'm working on a marquee wedding, no?
It's so funny. So the event that I just did was TP marquee, but it was still but I think people have it in their heads it's just a big tent. Like it's just a tent, you're just camping. So why would it be expensive? It's like, no, heating, lighting, electricity, and then bringing in your catering team, even though the actual cost may not be more in terms of food, it's just their logistics, the extra logistics they will give you an uplift for as well. So yeah, no, marquees are not cheaper, destination weddings are not cheaper. The only thing that I can say is definitely cheaper is eloping. So
yes. Oh, how I considered it. Yeah, that is very true. Eloping is cheaper for sure.
So, if it all comes down to that, which one of my clients has done, actually, they postponed their wedding, and then they decided that the amount that they want to spend now on their new wedding just doesn't work for the 50-person wedding that they wanted. So they're instead going to have an elopement with me, and it's great. So,
Oh, you're doing the elopement. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's my first elopement. I don't really do elopements, but they're letting me do a tablescape and have fun with the colour scheme.
That's what I was going to ask. I love elopement. So my asterisk to your comment just now is depending on the type of elopement that you have. So I saw one that they were in America and they flew to Paris, and then they got this really amazing room, or suite I should say. I had a balcony that overlooked the Eiffel Tower, and it was covered in flowers, and they had cake, and it was just the two of them. But that is, I'm sure what they spent on that is some people's budgets. So
for sure,
but that's cheaper than, I guess, for their taste level, what a bigger wedding would have cost them.
Exactly. So
yeah, it's the premise still stands.
Yeah, if you maintain the same taste level, or if you want something fancier, you've just got to bring the guests down. Guests are the most expensive thing in your budget, so bring the guests down, even to two, just the two of you. And you will make something amazing, I'm sure. But I don't want anyone to come away from this conversation feeling disheartened. We've seen some really lovely budget weddings.
Yes.
We have published one, we published the Orange County wedding, the micro wedding, which is on the blog now. It's Courtney and Caress. Thank you so much for letting us publish you. That was not a very expensive wedding. If you keep the guests down, you can make some really, really cute and beautiful stuff. And if you can't keep guests down, then just save for longer. You don't have to get married this year.
That's
save
true.
for a couple more years.
That is very, very true. But yeah, if you're in a hurry to start your life together, then you might want to cut those guests down.
Yes, and we will do a podcast at some point about guest numbers and keeping the family happy with all of that, because I'm sure you have so much to say on
I
that.
do. Oh yes, you'll have to come back for that one. I had quite a large weddings, so yes, I'll be able to weigh in on that one. Do you think, I know you're not married, but do you think that weddings are expensive? Too expensive, I should say. Yes, they can be expensive, but are they too expensive?
I think it feels expensive when you look at the overall price tag. Like, if I think about the type of wedding that I want to have, and me knowing how much that's going to cost, that feels like a lot of money to me. Because I'm minimum going to spend like 60 grand on my wedding, I think, and mine would be quite small. So I have a very small family. I've got 12 core family members. Like, we're small, so realistically I'd be looking at maybe 50 guests, maybe up to 100, depending on what their side of the family is like. I don't know. But for what I want, I know that I'm minimum spending £60,000, if not more. So probably between the 60 to 80,000 pound. And when I think about that, that feels like a lot of money to me. But because I know the breakdown, like, I know where that money is going, and there are certain things that I want for my wedding. Like, I really want a Motown band to be there for most of the day.
That'd be so cool.
I've got like ceremony music in mind, and like literally most of the day I want them there. That's going to cost me so much money. Like, bands are so expensive.
That's essentially what I wanted for ours, but because of our number of guests, I had to forego my band.
Yeah, I read that.
Sometimes.
I read that in your piece.
It's
so heartbreaking.
Sad.
Like, no, I would cut out everyone from my list and have an elopement if I could only have the band.
Okay.
So yeah, so there are certain things that I know that I wouldn't compromise on. So when I look at the breakdown, it makes sense, and I would spend that kind of money on the breakdown. So
yeah,
if that helps anyone listening to think, okay, but I want to have a really good photographer, and this photographer is going to cost me 2,500. If it helps to look at the actual breakdown rather than the overall amount when you're thinking about how expensive, quote unquote, weddings are, I think it's helpful. Don't look at the 60 grand, look at the, but I'm spending £200 per person on this amazing wedding menu. That might be helpful.
Yeah, that is a really good way to look at it, and a good way to break it down. Also, I mean, we're hoping that you're only going to do this one time, so if it means saving a bit more or just prioritizing what's important to you and getting that thing, then I would highly recommend doing that.
For sure. And yeah, if you, for example, like, I'm someone who will get married many times, probably hopefully to the same person, but I will be someone who renews my vows a lot, because I have all the weddings in my brain. I have so many ideas, I just can't do it in one.
Me too. You and I are in sync, because that was my next point I was going to say. And if you can't do all of that, you can do what I'm going to do and wait for some sort of vow renewal and just keep and have the wedding that you wanted.
Yeah. Like, if you just want to start your life, you just want to get your wedding out of the way, your first one, then you can do what you can with what you have, and then renew your vows in 5 years. And you've got something more spectacular. You have built more wealth. You have saved a bit more. You have less financial strain because you've already bought your house. Things like that. Just renew your vows and do it again in different ways. I intend to do that every 5 years until I die.
Oh, me too. So next year. Oh gosh, I should help get you to plan our renewal next year. I just need to save so I can afford you.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, it's literally almost exactly a year.
A
Hey?
year, yeah.
Ooh.
I did not process that until now. I think I was going for either 5 or 7. It should have been 7, but then, even though I don't like the number 7, but 7 is the number of completion, apparently, biblically. But anyway, so I was thinking 5 or 10, but 10 is too far. So it might have to be next year. Way too far.
10 is way too far. I was actually thinking about every 3 years, but this very much depends on how wealthy I marry, or how wealthy I am. So we'll see. Anything else we want to talk about with money and weddings?
I think we have covered it all. It would be great to hear other people's opinions on this. So after you've listened, feel free to send us an email, message us on Instagram. We would love to know your thoughts on weddings, because people often think that when the word wedding is mentioned, suppliers immediately just like tack on the zeros. And while there may be some people who do that, the majority of us do not.
We really
trust
don't.
and believe. We don't even charge what we should be charging for the amount of work that we are doing. So I would love to, I'm sure you would as well, we would love to know your thoughts on this, and this, especially your experience as you've been planning your wedding. Do you think that people just see you coming and think, yeah, we're gonna inflate the price because they said it's a wedding? And have you tried, or would you try telling somebody that it's a birthday party, or you wouldn't tell them it's for a wedding at all? How do we feel about that?
Dumbest thing ever. It's just
like
dumb.
Of course they're gonna know it's a friggin' wedding.
It's so dumb. And yeah, that was actual advice given on an actual YouTube video relatively recently that we saw, and just thought it was the craziest thing to say. Imagine telling a photographer that you're just having a birthday party and it's your whole wedding. Like, you don't understand, like, the logistics on a pure logistical level. As a supplier, a birthday party is very different to a wedding. Just so much is changes. So
it's quite deceptive as well. Also, photographers, the equipment, the cameras that they would bring for a birthday party versus a wedding.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen a photographer. I know you have, Olivia, but those listening, at weddings, it's almost like gun holsters that they have. You know, you're switching the lenses and the cameras. I'm sure for your birthday, they'd probably just rock up with the one camera. So you would do yourself a disservice, actually. The reason why you book them and the style that you like for their wedding photography, you may not get that for your wedding if you book them for a birthday.
Yes, and you wouldn't get the places that wedding photographers have to crawl into to get the right shot of you doing your first kiss and all that kind of thing. Like, all of that mental preparation and pressure that they need to be fully pre-prepped for. If you don't tell them what's happening, they are not ready, and you are they are more likely to miss those big moments. So just don't do that to us. It's not kind. It's very deceptive, and it's not gonna save you any money. So
no. It could save you some heartache if you don't do that, so please don't.
Yes, but yes, do comment and send us your opinions. Let us know what you think about this. Do suppliers owe you affordability? Do you think that weddings are too expensive? And what do you think your solutions would be without, making the wedding industry bankrupt? With that,
I like that.
I think we will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for joining me, Assumpta. This was really fun.
Yeah, well, we'll see you again next time. Thank you to everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you to our listeners. Please leave us a little review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or however you are listening to us today. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.